In a world where people lose themselves trying to be chosen, where silence creates anxiety, and where love is often confused with emotional dependency, there is a subtle illusion shaping your suffering without you even realizing it. The illusion is that loving yourself less makes you more lovable, and that your value depends on someone else staying in your life. Buddhism teaches that attachment is the root of suffering, and the deepest attachment is not to a person, but to the need to be validated by them. When your sense of self depends on being needed or approved of, your peace becomes fragile. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that you no longer need to be chosen because you have already chosen yourself. Today you will understand why loving yourself more than anyone else is not selfishness, but awareness, and why choosing yourself first is the beginning of true inner freedom. 1. You cannot give what you do not have. Many people believe that loving themselves less makes them humble or selfless. They think putting everyone else first is a sign of goodness. But when you constantly ignore your own needs, something slowly breaks inside you. At first, you feel strong for sacrificing. Over time, you feel tired, then drained, then quietly resentful. When you give without restoring your own energy, your kindness becomes exhaustion. You start feeling overwhelmed by small things. You become irritated more easily. You begin to feel unappreciated, even if no one intended to hurt you. This happens because you are pouring from an empty cup, and no one can keep giving from emptiness without eventually collapsing. The Buddha taught balance, not self-erasure. He never said you must destroy yourself to love others. True compassion includes yourself. If your inner world is unstable, your love becomes dependent on validation. You help others hoping they will notice. You sacrifice hoping they will value you more. And when they do not respond the way you expect, you feel hurt. Loving yourself more than anyone else means filling your own heart first. It means taking care of your body, protecting your mental peace, and respecting your time. It means setting boundaries without guilt. It means resting when you are tired, instead of forcing yourself to keep giving. When you love yourself deeply, your love for others becomes pure. You no longer give out of fear of losing them. You no longer help just to feel needed. You give because you genuinely want to, not because you are trying to earn love. Your energy feels lighter. Your heart feels stable. You cannot offer peace if you are full of chaos. You cannot offer love if you are starving for it yourself. When you become full within, your love flows naturally, not from lack, but from strength. 2. When you choose others over yourself, you teach them to do the same. Every time you ignore your own feelings to keep someone else comfortable, you send a silent message to the world. That message says, "My needs are not important." You may not say it out loud, but your actions speak clearly. When you constantly put yourself last, people slowly begin to treat you that way. At first, it feels like love. You adjust your plans. You tolerate behavior that hurts you. You stay quiet to avoid conflict. You convince yourself that being understanding is the right thing to do. But over time, something changes. You begin to feel unseen. You start to feel taken for granted. And deep inside, you wonder why no one chooses you the way you choose them. Buddhism teaches awareness of cause and effect. The way you treat yourself becomes the standard others follow. If you do not respect your own boundaries, people will cross them. If you do not value your own time, others will waste it. If you constantly chase, others will expect to be chased. Choosing yourself first does not mean you stop caring about others. It means you stop abandoning yourself. It means you speak when something feels wrong. It means you walk away from disrespect instead of tolerating it. It means you understand that protecting your peace is not selfish, it is wise. When you love yourself more than anyone else, you raise your standards. You stop begging for attention. You stop shrinking to fit into someone's life. And something powerful happens. Either people rise to meet your level of respect, or they leave, and both outcomes protect your dignity. The moment you start choosing yourself, you teach the world how to treat you. 3. Attachment disguises itself as love. Many people believe they are suffering because they love too much. They say, "I care too deeply," or "I give my whole heart." But if you look closely, most of the pain does not come from love itself. It comes from attachment. And attachment is very different from love. Love is calm. Love is steady. Love allows freedom. Attachment is anxious. Attachment is fearful. Attachment constantly asks, what if they leave? What if they change? What if I am not enough? When you are attached, your happiness becomes tied to someone else's behavior. If they respond warmly, you feel secure. If they pull away, even slightly, you feel panic. Your mood rises and falls based on their attention. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering because attachment creates dependence. When you depend on someone to feel complete, you hand them emotional control over you. You may not realize it, but you begin adjusting your personality, your opinions, and even your boundaries just to keep them close. You tolerate things you normally would not accept. You silence your intuition. You ignore red flags. All because the fear of losing them feels stronger than the desire to protect yourself. Attachment often hides behind beautiful words. It says, "I cannot live without you." It says, "You are my everything." At first, that sounds romantic. But if someone becomes your entire world, what happens when they leave? What happens when they change? If your identity is built around another person, you collapse the moment they are no longer there in the same way. Loving yourself more than anyone else breaks this pattern. It does not make you cold or distant. It makes you stable. When you love yourself deeply, you do not cling to people out of fear. You enjoy them, appreciate them, and care for them, but you do not depend on them for your worth. Your happiness is rooted inside you, not in their approval. When you choose yourself first, you stop confusing intensity with love. You stop believing that emotional chaos is passion. You begin to understand that real love feels safe, not stressful. It feels supportive, not suffocating. It allows space, not control. The more you strengthen your relationship with yourself, the less you fear abandonment. Because even if someone walks away, you are still standing. You still have your values. You still have your direction. You still have your peace. And that is the difference between attachment and love. Attachment says, "Without you, I am nothing." Self-love says, "With or without you, I remain whole." When you reach that point, you can love freely, not from desperation, not from fear, but from strength. 4. Self-love is discipline, not just emotion. Many people think self-love is a feeling. They imagine it as motivation, positive affirmations, or moments of confidence. They believe loving yourself means simply saying, "I am enough," and hoping the feeling stays. But feelings change. Some days you feel strong, some days you feel insecure. If self-love depends only on emotion, it will disappear the moment life becomes difficult. True self-love is not a mood, it is discipline. It is choosing what protects your peace, even when it is uncomfortable. It is walking away from situations that feel familiar but unhealthy. It is saying no when your heart knows something is wrong, even if your mouth wants to say yes. Discipline means acting in your own best interest, even when emotions try to convince you otherwise. The Buddha taught right action and right intention. This means your choices must align with your well-being, not just your temporary desires. Sometimes you want to stay in a relationship because you are attached. Sometimes you want to reply to someone who disrespected you because you crave closure. Sometimes you want to overextend yourself because you fear disappointing others. But discipline asks a deeper question: Does this protect my peace? Loving yourself more than anyone else means choosing long-term stability over short-term comfort. It means you do not entertain people who disturb your mind. It means you do not chase someone who is clearly pulling away. It means you stop explaining your worth to those who refuse to see it. Self-love is also discipline in small daily actions. It is taking care of your body even when you feel lazy. It is controlling your reactions when you feel angry. It is managing your time instead of wasting it on people who drain you. It is refusing to gossip, complain, or lower your standards just to feel included. These quiet choices build inner strength. When you practice this kind of discipline, your confidence changes. It becomes steady instead of emotional. You begin to trust yourself because you know you will protect your own well-being. You no longer rely on others to make you feel safe because you have proven to yourself that you will not abandon your own boundaries. Many people say they love themselves, but they still tolerate disrespect. They still chase approval. They still allow chaos into their lives. That is not self-love. That is attachment pretending to be love. Real self-love sometimes feels lonely at first. It may require distance. It may require silence. It may require letting go of people who once felt important. But in that discipline, something powerful grows. You develop self-respect, and self-respect creates unshakable peace. When you love yourself with discipline, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop accepting less than what aligns with your values. You stop betraying yourself for temporary attention. And that is when your life begins to feel stable, clear, and strong. Self-love is not about feeling good all the time. It is about choosing what is good for you, even when it is hard. 5. The more you need approval, the less you value yourself. One of the quietest ways people abandon themselves is by constantly seeking approval. They do not even realize they are doing it. They adjust their opinions to avoid disagreement. They change their behavior to be liked. They stay silent about their true feelings because they fear rejection. And slowly, without noticing, their identity begins to depend on how others react to them. At first, approval feels good. A compliment lifts your mood. A message makes you smile. Someone's praise gives you confidence. There is nothing wrong with appreciation. The problem begins when your emotional stability depends on it. When your peace rises and falls based on someone else's validation, you are no longer in control of your own worth. The Buddha taught non-attachment to praise and criticism. Both are temporary, both are unstable. One day someone admires you, the next day they may judge you. If your identity is built on praise, criticism will destroy you. If your confidence depends on approval, rejection will feel unbearable. When you constantly seek validation, you silently communicate to yourself, "I am not enough unless someone confirms it." You begin performing instead of living. You become overly careful with your words. You overthink simple interactions. You replay conversations in your mind, wondering if you said the right thing. This mental exhaustion is not love. It is insecurity disguised as connection. Loving yourself more than anyone else means approving of yourself first. It means knowing your intentions are pure, even if someone misunderstands you. It means standing by your values, even if they are unpopular. It means accepting that not everyone will like you, and that is not a problem to solve. When you stop chasing approval, something powerful happens. You become lighter. You stop trying to impress. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You begin acting from authenticity instead of fear, and authenticity has a quiet strength that cannot be shaken by opinions. This does not mean you become arrogant or careless. It means your self-worth is no longer for sale. You can listen to feedback without collapsing. You can accept criticism without losing confidence. You can receive praise without becoming dependent on it. The more secure you are within yourself, the less you need applause to feel valuable, and when you no longer need validation, your presence changes. You become calm, you become grounded. You become someone who does not bend easily under pressure. Approval is pleasant, but it is not necessary. Respect from others begins with respect for yourself. The moment you stop begging for validation, you start embodying quiet confidence. And quiet confidence is far more powerful than constant praise. 6. Solitude is where self-love is built. Most people are not afraid of being alone. They are afraid of meeting themselves without distraction. When the phone is silent, when there is no one to text, no one to impress, no one to entertain, a strange discomfort begins to rise. Thoughts become louder, insecurities surface, old wounds appear. And instead of facing them, many people rush back into noise. But solitude is not your enemy, it is your teacher. The Buddha often withdrew from the world, not because he hated people, but because he understood something powerful. Clarity is born in silence. When you are constantly surrounded by others, it becomes easy to define yourself through them. You see yourself through their reactions, their attention, their approval. But when you sit alone, you begin to see who you truly are without an audience. At first, solitude can feel heavy. You may notice how often you crave messages. You may realize how much your mood depends on someone checking in. You may feel the urge to fill the silence with music, scrolling, or conversation. This is not weakness, this is awareness, and awareness is the beginning of growth. Loving yourself more than anyone else means becoming comfortable in your own presence. It means learning to enjoy your own thoughts instead of running from them. It means being able to sit in a quiet room and feel peaceful rather than restless. When you can be alone without feeling lonely, you have developed emotional independence. Solitude gives you something relationships cannot always give: perspective. When you step back from constant interaction, you begin to see patterns clearly. You notice who drains your energy. You notice where you compromise too much. You notice what truly matters to you instead of what others expect from you. In silence, your intuition becomes stronger. This is where self-love is built, not in loud declarations, but in quiet understanding. You start asking yourself important questions. What do I actually want? What makes me feel at peace? What behavior will I no longer tolerate? Instead of adjusting yourself to fit into someone else's world, you begin shaping your own. When you are comfortable alone, you stop chasing connection out of fear. You no longer rush into relationships just to avoid emptiness. You choose people because they add to your peace, not because they distract you from discomfort. Your standards rise naturally because you no longer need someone to fill a void. Solitude also builds emotional strength. When challenges come, you do not panic as easily. You are used to sitting with your thoughts. You are used to observing your emotions without being controlled by them. You have practiced stability in silence, so chaos outside of you feels less overwhelming. Many people confuse loneliness with solitude. Loneliness feels like lack. Solitude feels like wholeness. Loneliness says, I am missing something. Solitude says, I am complete within myself. The difference lies in self-love. When you truly love yourself, being alone no longer feels like rejection. It feels like restoration. It becomes a space where you recharge, reflect, and strengthen your inner foundation. And once your foundation is strong, relationships become a choice, not a necessity. Solitude is not isolation, it is preparation. It prepares you to enter the world without losing yourself. It prepares you to love others without clinging. It prepares you to stand firm even if everyone else walks away. When you can sit alone and feel at home within yourself, you have reached a level of self-love that cannot be shaken. 7. choosing yourself is spiritual strength. Many people believe choosing themselves is selfish. They think putting their needs first means they are neglecting others. They were taught that sacrifice is love, that endurance is loyalty, and that staying in situations that hurt them proves commitment. But there is a difference between patience and self-betrayal. There is a difference between compassion and self-neglect. Choosing yourself is not ego, it is awareness. The Buddha's path was not about destroying the self, it was about understanding it. He taught that suffering begins when we cling to what harms us, when we ignore truth, and when we refuse to see clearly. Choosing yourself means seeing clearly. It means recognizing when something is disturbing your peace and having the courage to step back from it. Sometimes choosing yourself means walking away from a relationship that once meant everything to you. Sometimes it means refusing to tolerate disrespect, even if it comes from someone you love. Sometimes it means disappointing others, because protecting your mental and emotional health matters more than pleasing them. These decisions are not easy. They require strength. They require discipline. They require faith in yourself. When you do not choose yourself, you slowly disappear. You say yes when you mean no. You stay silent when you need to speak. You accept behavior that lowers your standards. And over time, your confidence weakens because deep inside you know you are not protecting your own dignity. That quiet, inner disappointment is heavier than any external criticism. Choosing yourself means you stop negotiating your worth. It means you stop chasing people who do not choose you. It means you stop explaining your value to those who refuse to see it. You understand that your peace is not something to gamble with. It is something to guard. This kind of strength is spiritual because it comes from inner clarity. It is not loud. It does not need to prove anything. It simply stands firm. When you love yourself more than anyone else, your decisions begin to align with your long-term well-being instead of temporary emotions. You no longer act from fear of abandonment. You act from self-respect. There will be moments when choosing yourself feels lonely. Not everyone will understand your boundaries. Some may call you distant. Some may say you have changed. And they are right. You have changed. You have stopped sacrificing your peace to maintain approval. You have stopped shrinking to keep others comfortable. But here is the truth. The people who truly value you will respect your standards. The ones who only benefited from your self-neglect may leave, and that is not loss, that is protection. When you choose yourself, you become stable. When you become stable, you become powerful. Your happiness no longer depends on who stays or who goes. Your identity no longer shifts based on someone's attention. You stand rooted in your own values. Choosing yourself is not about rejecting love. It is about loving from strength instead of fear. It is about giving without losing yourself. It is about caring deeply while remaining grounded. The moment you fully choose yourself, something shifts inside you. You stop feeling desperate. You stop feeling insecure. You stop chasing what does not align with your growth. And in that shift, you discover real freedom. Because the strongest person in the room is not the one who controls others. It is the one who has mastered the courage to choose themselves. 8. When you love yourself fully, you stop fearing loss. One of the deepest fears that controls human behavior is the fear of losing someone, losing their attention, losing their affection, losing their presence. This fear quietly influences decisions, compromises, and sacrifices. Many people stay in situations that disturb their peace simply because they are afraid of being left alone. They tolerate disrespect because the thought of loss feels heavier than the pain they are already experiencing. But when you truly love yourself, your relationship with loss begins to change. The Buddha taught that everything in life is impermanent. People change, feelings change, circumstances change. Nothing remains exactly as it is. Suffering begins when we try to hold tightly to what is naturally shifting. When you cling to someone out of fear, you are fighting reality. And fighting reality always creates anxiety. Loving yourself more than anyone else does not mean you stop caring about people. It means your stability does not collapse if someone leaves. It means your identity is not built around someone else's presence. When you are deeply rooted in self-love, you understand that losing someone does not mean losing yourself. When you do not love yourself enough, loss feels like proof that you are not worthy. You start blaming yourself. You replay conversations. You question your value. You think, if I were better, they would have stayed. This kind of thinking weakens you because it ties your self-worth to someone else's decision. But when you love yourself fully, you see loss differently. You understand that sometimes people leave not because you are lacking, but because paths change. You understand that someone walking away does not erase your value. It simply reveals that the connection was not meant to continue in the same way. Self-love creates emotional stability. When you are stable, you do not panic when distance appears. You do not beg for attention. You do not chase someone who is pulling away. Instead, you observe calmly. You respect their choice, and you protect your dignity. This does not mean you do not feel pain. Loving yourself does not make you emotionless, it makes you resilient. You can feel sadness without losing your balance. You can experience disappointment without collapsing. You can grieve a connection while still knowing you are whole. When you stop fearing loss, your behavior changes. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop trying to control outcomes. You stop shrinking to be chosen. You understand that anyone who truly aligns with your growth will stay without you forcing it. And anyone who leaves creates space for something more aligned with your peace. The more you strengthen your relationship with yourself, the less terrifying loss becomes. Because even if everything outside of you changes, you remain grounded, you remain steady. You remain connected to your own values and direction. This is freedom. Not the freedom of avoiding pain, but the freedom of not being controlled by fear. When you love yourself deeply, you no longer cling to people to feel secure. You enjoy them while they are present, and you release them when it is time. And in that release, you discover something powerful. You were never incomplete. You were simply afraid to stand alone. Once you overcome that fear, nothing can truly shake you. 9. Loving yourself means rewriting the story you tell about yourself. Every person carries an invisible story inside their mind. It is the quiet voice that speaks when no one else is around. It comments on your mistakes. It judges your appearance. It reminds you of past failures. It compares you to others. Over time, this inner voice becomes so familiar that you stop questioning it. You begin to believe everything it says. If that voice is harsh, your life feels heavy. If that voice constantly says, "You are not enough," you will search for someone else to prove that you are. If it says, "You always mess things up," you will fear trying again. If it whispers, "You are hard to love," you will tolerate behavior that confirms that belief. This is why loving yourself is not only about actions, it is about changing the story you repeat inside your mind. The Buddha taught that the mind creates suffering when it clings to distorted thoughts. Most pain is not just from events, but from the meaning we attach to them. Two people can experience the same rejection, and one grows stronger while the other feels destroyed. The difference is not the event. It is the story they tell themselves afterward. When you do not love yourself enough, your inner dialogue becomes your enemy. You replay mistakes again and again. You magnify flaws. You downplay your strengths. You forgive others quickly, but you punish yourself endlessly. You would never speak to someone you love the way you sometimes speak to yourself. Loving yourself more than anyone else means becoming aware of that voice and gently reshaping it. It means catching yourself when you think, "I am not good enough," and asking, "Is this true or is this fear?" It means replacing harsh judgment with understanding. It means remembering that growth takes time and that mistakes do not define your worth. This does not mean lying to yourself or pretending everything is perfect. It means being honest without being cruel. You can acknowledge areas where you need to improve without attacking your identity. You can take responsibility for your actions without labeling yourself as a failure. When your inner voice becomes supportive instead of destructive, everything changes. You become braver. You take healthier risks. You stop seeking constant reassurance from others because you are no longer at war with yourself. Your confidence begins to feel steady rather than fragile. Many people try to find love outside because they have not created it inside. They want someone to silence their doubts. They want someone to convince them they are worthy. But no amount of external love can fully heal a negative inner narrative. The real transformation begins when you decide to speak to yourself with respect. Imagine waking up each day without attacking yourself. Imagine making a mistake and learning from it instead of replaying it for weeks. Imagine facing rejection and thinking, "This does not reduce my value." That is the power of rewriting your inner story. When you love yourself, you stop identifying with every negative thought. You observe it, question it, and release it. You choose thoughts that support your growth instead of thoughts that weaken you. Over time, your mind becomes a safe place instead of a battlefield. And when your mind becomes peaceful, your relationships become healthier. You no longer need constant validation because you are no longer doubting your own worth. You no longer tolerate disrespect because you no longer believe you deserve it. Loving yourself means becoming your own ally. It means standing on your own side, especially when life feels difficult. It means understanding that the most important relationship you will ever have is the one with yourself. Once you change the story you tell about who you are, you change the direction of your entire life. 10. When you love yourself, you stop abandoning your future. One of the most painful things a person can do is not being rejected by others, but quietly rejecting their own future. Every time you choose short-term comfort over long-term growth, every time you stay where you know you are shrinking, every time you ignore your potential because you are afraid to stand alone, you are abandoning the person you could become. Loving yourself more than anyone else means caring deeply about your future self. It means asking, will this decision strengthen me or weaken me? It means thinking beyond today's emotions and looking at tomorrow's consequences. Many people say they love themselves, but they repeatedly choose what keeps them small. They stay in draining relationships because they fear loneliness. They tolerate mediocrity because change feels uncomfortable. They delay their goals because distraction is easier than discipline. This is not self-love, this is self-avoidance. The Buddha taught awareness of cause and effect. Every action plants a seed. If you constantly choose what feels easy, you plant seeds of regret. If you constantly choose what aligns with growth, you plant seeds of strength. Loving yourself means being wise enough to choose the seeds carefully. When you truly value yourself, you stop wasting your time on people who pull you away from your purpose. You stop sacrificing your dreams for temporary approval. You begin protecting your time, your energy, and your focus because you understand they are limited resources. You start asking yourself powerful questions. Is this helping me grow? Is this aligned with who I want to become? Self-love also means forgiving your past without living in it. Many people stay stuck because they believe their past defines their future. They replay old mistakes and convince themselves they are not capable of more. But loving yourself means believing in your ability to evolve. It means understanding that who you were is not who you must remain. When you stop abandoning your future, your daily choices become stronger. You wake up with more intention, you speak with more clarity, you walk away from distractions more easily, you become selective about where you invest your time and heart. Not because you are cold, but because you respect your own potential. There will be moments when choosing your future feels lonely. Growth often requires distance from familiar environments. It may require outgrowing people who no longer align with your direction. But loving yourself means accepting that comfort is not always peace, and familiarity is not always healthy. The moment you decide that your future matters more than temporary comfort, something shifts inside you. You begin acting like someone who believes they are worthy of a better life. You stop settling. You stop waiting. You stop shrinking. Loving yourself is not just about how you feel about yourself today. It is about the decisions you make that protect the person you are becoming. It is about honoring your potential enough to take responsibility for your direction. When you love yourself deeply, you no longer betray your future for the sake of pleasing others. You become committed to your growth. You become disciplined in your habits. You become patient with your progress. And one day, when you look back, you will realize that the greatest act of love was not chasing someone else. It was choosing yourself again and again until your life began to reflect your true worth. 11. Loving yourself means becoming emotionally independent. One of the highest forms of self-love is emotional independence. This does not mean you stop caring about people or that you become distant and cold. It means your emotional stability no longer depends on someone else's mood, attention, or presence. It means you feel deeply, but you are not controlled by what you feel. Many people mistake emotional dependence for connection. They believe that needing someone constantly is proof of love. They feel anxious when messages are delayed. They overthink small changes in tone. They interpret silence as rejection. Their inner peace rises and falls based on how someone else behaves. This kind of attachment creates instability, not harmony. The Buddha taught that peace comes from within, not from external conditions. If your happiness is tied to how others treat you, you will live in constant uncertainty. People are unpredictable. Their moods shift. Their priorities change. If you build your emotional world around them, your foundation will always feel unstable. Loving yourself more than anyone else means building that foundation inside yourself. It means learning how to calm your own mind instead of immediately seeking reassurance. It means sitting with discomfort instead of rushing to fill it. It means asking yourself, why does this trigger me? Instead of blaming others for every emotional reaction. Emotional independence begins with awareness. When you notice anxiety, instead of panicking, you observe it. When you feel insecure, instead of chasing validation, you reflect on its root. You begin to understand that your emotions are signals, not commands. They are experiences passing through you, not permanent truths about your worth. This kind of self-understanding creates strength. When someone pulls away, you do not immediately assume you are unworthy. When someone criticizes you, you do not collapse internally. When someone praises you, you do not become overly attached to their approval. You remain balanced. Emotional independence also changes the way you love. You no longer love from fear. You do not cling. You do not control. You do not sacrifice your boundaries just to avoid conflict. You choose relationships where both people stand strong on their own. You connect from wholeness, not from emptiness. Many people fear becoming emotionally independent because they think it will make them less passionate or less caring. But the opposite is true. When you are emotionally stable, your love becomes healthier. It is not chaotic. It is not desperate. It is not based on insecurity. It is calm, steady, and grounded. Loving yourself means trusting that you can handle your own emotions. It means believing that even if someone leaves, you will survive. Even if someone misunderstands you, you remain secure. Even if someone chooses differently, your value does not decrease. The strongest person is not the one who feels nothing. It is the one who feels everything and still remains centered. Emotional independence gives you that center. It allows you to experience joy without clinging and sadness without collapsing. When you become emotionally independent, your life changes quietly but powerfully. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop overanalyzing every situation. You stop depending on constant reassurance. You become your own anchor. And once you are anchored within yourself, no external storm can completely shake you. 12. Loving yourself means living in alignment with your true self. One of the deepest forms of self-betrayal happens quietly. It happens when you live in a way that does not truly reflect who you are. You say things you do not believe just to fit in. You agree with people to avoid conflict. You pursue goals that impress others but do not fulfill you. Slowly, you begin living a life that looks acceptable from the outside but feels empty on the inside. This is what happens when you do not love yourself enough to live authentically. The Buddha taught that suffering arises when we live in ignorance of our true nature. Ignorance does not only mean lack of knowledge, it means ignoring your own truth. When you constantly act against your values to gain approval, you create inner conflict, and inner conflict quietly drains your peace. Loving yourself more than anyone else means being honest about who you are. It means recognizing your values and refusing to compromise them for temporary acceptance. It means understanding what matters to you, even if others do not understand it. Alignment is when your thoughts, words, and actions move in the same direction. When you are not aligned, life feels confusing. You feel restless even when things seem fine. You feel disconnected even when surrounded by people. That discomfort is your inner self asking for honesty. It is a sign that you are living for expectations instead of authenticity. Choosing alignment requires courage. It may require changing your environment. It may require speaking truths that are uncomfortable. It may require letting go of identities that once defined you. But loving yourself means trusting that your peace is worth that discomfort. Alignment also means respecting your limits. If you are someone who values calmness, constantly surrounding yourself with chaos will exhaust you. If you value growth, staying in environments that discourage ambition will weaken you. When you love yourself, you arrange your life in a way that supports your nature instead of suppressing it. This does not mean life becomes perfect. It means it becomes honest. When you live in alignment, your energy feels clearer. Decisions become easier because they are guided by values, not fear. You no longer need to perform for approval because you are no longer pretending to be someone else. Many people spend years chasing validation, only to realize they never ask themselves what truly fulfills them. Loving yourself means asking that question now. What kind of life feels peaceful to you? What kind of relationships feel healthy? What kind of habits support your growth? When your life reflects your inner truth, confidence grows naturally. You do not have to force it. You do not have to prove anything. You simply feel stable because you are no longer divided inside. Loving yourself is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming honest. It is about standing in your truth without apology. It is about building a life that reflects who you truly are, not who you were pressured to be. And when you live in alignment with yourself, you stop chasing external approval because you finally have something more valuable. Inner peace that comes from knowing you are not betraying yourself anymore. 13. Loving yourself means releasing the need to be chosen. One of the quietest addictions many people carry is the need to be chosen. Chosen in love, chosen in friendship, chosen in opportunities, chosen in conversations. Deep inside, there is a desire to feel preferred, valued, and selected over others. And when that does not happen, insecurity begins to grow. You start questioning yourself. You compare. You overanalyze. You wonder what you lack. You may even compete silently for attention. This constant need to be chosen creates anxiety because your worth becomes dependent on someone else's decision. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from craving. Craving is not only about material things, it is about emotional dependence. When you crave being chosen, you give others the power to define your value. If they choose you, you feel worthy. If they do not, you feel rejected. Your confidence begins to fluctuate based on external validation. Loving yourself more than anyone else breaks this cycle. When you truly love yourself, you stop waiting to be selected. You start selecting yourself. You choose your own peace. You choose your own growth. You choose environments where you are respected. You choose relationships where effort is mutual. You stop chasing spaces where you must prove your worth. The need to be chosen often comes from a fear of being alone or overlooked. But when you are secure within yourself, being overlooked does not shake you. You understand that someone else's preference is not a measure of your value. Not everyone will see your depth. Not everyone will recognize your effort. And that is not your failure. When you release the need to be chosen, you begin living with dignity. You no longer compete for attention. You no longer beg for time. You no longer overextend yourself just to be included. You become selective instead of desperate. This shift changes your energy. You move differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself with quiet confidence because you know you are not seeking approval. You are not trying to win someone over. You are simply being yourself. Releasing the need to be chosen also strengthens your relationships. When you are not chasing validation, you interact from stability instead of insecurity. You allow people to choose freely without trying to control the outcome. And when someone genuinely chooses you without pressure, the connection feels authentic. Many people exhaust themselves trying to prove they are worthy of being chosen. But worth does not need proof. It needs recognition. And if someone cannot recognize it, that does not reduce its existence. Loving yourself means understanding that you are not an option waiting to be selected. You are a whole person who can decide where to invest your time and heart. You stop asking, "Will they choose me?" and start asking, "Do I choose this?" That question alone transforms your life. When you no longer depend on being chosen, rejection loses its power, silence loses its sting, comparison loses its influence. You stand firmly in your own value. And once you choose yourself consistently, you no longer feel incomplete without someone else's selection. You become complete within your own decision. Loving yourself more than anyone else is not about becoming distant from the world. It is about becoming stable within it. It is about no longer depending on others to confirm your worth. It is about choosing your peace over pressure, your growth over comfort, and your dignity over temporary attention. When you love yourself deeply, you stop chasing what runs from you. You stop begging to be chosen. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never designed for your growth. You begin protecting your energy. You begin honoring your time. You begin respecting your own heart. Buddhism teaches that suffering begins with attachment. The greatest attachment is not always to people, but to the need to be validated by them. The moment you release that need, you step into freedom. You can love others without losing yourself. You can care deeply without clinging. You can walk away without collapsing. Choosing yourself first does not make you selfish. It makes you strong. It makes you clear. It makes you grounded. And a grounded person cannot be easily shaken by rejection, distance, or loss. Remember this: The longest relationship you will ever have is the one with yourself. If you betray yourself to keep others, you will always feel empty. But if you stand by yourself, protect yourself, and believe in yourself, you will never feel alone even when you are by yourself. Love yourself more than anyone else, not because you hate the world, but because you understand your value. Not because you want to push people away, but because you refuse to abandon yourself. And when you fully choose yourself, life begins to choose you back.